All right. Hi, everyone. So guess we're going to get started now. So it's 12 o'clock. I'm sure a couple more people might join as we go along, but here we go. Anyway, so today's webcast is about Civil 3D and InfraWorks 360 interoperability. So my name's Tim Yarris. I'm a user experience designer on the Civil 3D team here at Autodesk, and Charlie Ogden is here with me. And Charlie, who are you?
And I'm a product manager working on the InfraWorks product right now with 3D design and interoperability.
So our usual host, Eric Chappelle, had a conflict and could not be here today, so he asked that we step in and kind of kick things off and then also run through a few housekeeping things before we get into our demo here on interoperability. So, anyway, so here we go. So a few of you may have been to a couple of these webcasts before that we've been doing over the last, I think this is the third one. And so this is just an opportunity for us as the product team to connect with you guys, the InfraWorks 360 users, and give you a bit of perspective on features for InfraWorks 360 that you might not necessarily get as just a user. And so this gives you a good chance to give us feedback on what we're doing, ask questions on what you see, and hopefully it's just a good opportunity for you guys to kind of get a little bit closer to the development team, just so that you as the users can get closer to us as the makers of the product and everything. And so, so there's that. Next webcast that we're going to be doing is going to be on June 3rd, and that one is going to be at the same time that we are doing this one today, and that's going to be titled Inside Bridge Design. And so you can keep your eyes open for registration information on that, and you can see there are a couple different opportunities for you to register for that, as you see on the screen here. So the community site, the forum for both of those for InfraWorks 360, and then also all the social media elements that you see there on the screen as well for InfraWorks 360. So if you're interested in that, please register. We also have a number of other topics that we're hoping to cover on future webcasts, and you can see some of these up on screen right now, just to give an example of some of these. And so keep your eyes open for these coming up, and we're still working on prioritizing and staffing some of these topics so that we can present these to you. And so this is where you come in. We'd like your feedback on which of these we should be working on sooner rather than later. So we'd like you guys to kind of give us some information now, just help us vote what we would like, what you want to see next. And so up on screen right now, you should hopefully be seeing a poll, just what you want to see next, as far as like just, this is just a snapshot of some of the topics that we showed a moment ago. And so if you could please click your vote for what you want to see next, and we'll leave that open for a couple moments. And okay, so it looks like we got some results coming in and everything. And we'll let those kind of trickle in for a couple moments or so more. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close this poll. Thanks for voting. All right, the next up, one more really quick poll. We just want to kind of gauge where people are with InfraWorks 360 today. So if you could please just let us know what your level of use is, and you can kind of, same thing, I'll just kind of let this up, let this stay for a moment or two more. All right, I'm going to close this one out now too. So, okay. So thanks for letting us know. So just for your information, a couple places that you can go online that we have for more information about InfraWorks 360. So first up being the community page that hopefully a lot of you are familiar with. As you see here, we have a whole bunch of other information on that community page that is really useful for our customers, such as feed that shows you what some of the currently trending topics up on the forum, gallery of projects that other users have created and everything, social hub, videos that are available. As I mentioned, those upcoming webcasts are listed up there as well as recordings of the webcasts that have been done in the past. And so we're recording this webcast right now, so hopefully, and if anybody's interested in seeing a replay of this later on, you can go up there and find it. So lastly, the InfraWorks 360 forum page. Great place for you guys to go and kind of interact with other users of InfraWorks 360 as well as Autodesk staff, so you can get information and ask questions and get feedback and that sort of thing. And also, really cool thing that we have up there right now is this idea station. And so if you're not familiar with that, that's our method right now, as just kind of letting people go up there and kind of post feedback and post ideas of stuff that they'd like to see enhancements for InfraWorks 360, and then other users can see what you've posted as your ideas and vote on them, so that it kind of gives, if you hadn't necessarily thought of some enhancement like, hey, I'd like the product to do this, other people might not have thought of that, and they can go out there and say, hey, that is a great idea, and they can vote for it, and then that kind of gives us an idea of what we should be working on next. And so it gives us an idea of what we can kind of make sure that we are putting the right things in the product that are going to add value to you guys as users. So please check that out and post ideas and vote on stuff that's already up there. So housekeeping before we get started. Of course, the legal disclaimer is saying that we may talk about stuff today that might be happening in the future, but it might not. So the only real way that you're going to let is basically this is just saying that we're not guaranteeing that anything that we may mention in passing will be in the product. The only guarantee that you'll see something in the product is when you open the product and see it there. So please don't take what we say as gospel today. Just what's in the product is what's in the product. So many of you have probably seen these disclaimers from us, so there it is again. Finally, last thing, just ask a lot of questions. Use the questions and chat window to fire them at us and everything. We have a couple people online today kind of helping us out with questions. So Seth Hall actually is standing by, just kind of waiting for your questions to come in. So we're not going to open up the phone lines to just kind of let people ask questions vocally, just because the size of the audience, it would just be a bit kind of hairy to have that happen. So we're just going to rely on people just having questions in chat. So keep them coming. All right, so on that, I'm going to hand it over to Charlie to kind of get things started, and we're going to kind of hand things back and forth as we go through this process, because it is going to be going back and forth between the two products. So Charlie's going to kick things off with InfraWorks 360, and then I'll jump back in with Civil 3D. So Charlie, it's all you.
All right, thanks, Tim. So I'm going to switch over to InfraWorks here. So what we're going to do is we have a project designed here. Inside InfraWorks, we have a preliminary design that we started. And what we want to do is bring this into detailed design. So that's what I'm going to do, is pass the model over to Tim. Tim's going to open it up in Civil, where he would do detailed design and documentation. And then afterwards, when the detailed design is done, InfraWorks is also a great place to visualize the final model. So what we want to do is bring that model back into InfraWorks. So to start, I'm just going to show you what's in our preliminary model here. And just zoom in to our project. We have a few roads in the model. There's also a number of coverages showing some park areas and water areas in the model. Coverages are being used also for this court over here, the park that's shown. And we also have let's see, some drainage in the model. So there's some piping, some inlets and manholes. Just take a quicker look at some of the drainage if I select one of these inlets. The inlets and manholes here are using content from Project Chameleon, which is an Autodesk Labs project. You can, if you check that out, you can create content right now for inlets and manholes that you can share between InfraWorks and Civil 3D. So the content we're using in this model, this is just out of the box with InfraWorks content. It's also in Civil 3D, an equal part here. So what we're going to do, the parts that I'm using, which you can see is a cylindrical structure with the slab top and a 48-inch diameter. So these parts, when we go into Civil, will be brought into the model there. So with the manhole and the centric structure with a 24-inch diameter. All right, and there's also the piping for the drainage. And then along the road, there's also intersections in the model. So our preliminary design, again, we have roads with intersections, we have some coverages, some water areas, and the drainage, piping, and structures. Right, so what we're going to do now, so Tim's going to open this up into Civil 3D, and we'll show how that process works.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Charlie. So let's see. Part of this process right now is, as a lot of you may know, when you have an InfraWorks model open, it is locked, and so you can't go, like Civil 3D is not going to be able to go into the model and get what it needs if the model is locked. So what we need to do first is close the model or close InfraWorks altogether. So I'm going to close InfraWorks completely just so that we'll unlock the model and you will be able to bring that stuff into Civil 3D. So I'm closing that. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to open Civil 3D. Okay, so as you see right here, I've just got a blank drawing open right now, and up on the Insert tab in Civil 3D, we've got this new in 2016 for Civil 3D, we have this new InfraWorks 360 panel that's got the tools that we're going to be using here. So two things. We've got the Open InfraWorks 360 model command, and secondly, we have this configure exchange settings. And basically what this is going to do is this lets you kind of set up different recipes of settings so that you can reuse different all these different recipes as you need them and just have it so that you can like set it once and forget it kind of thing. So I'm going to go into this and show you how this works really quickly. So I'm going to just click that. And then this dialog here tells you pretty much what InfraWorks 360 objects are available and what they're going to become once they get into Civil 3D. So in this case here, we'll look at a terrain surface in InfraWorks 360 is going to be a tin surface in Civil, and you can then go in and configure how you want, what sort of object settings you want, how you want the tin surface to look when it comes into Civil 3D. And so for this case, we've got different styles that you can pick just based on what the styles that are contained in the drawing that's open. Layer that you want it to be on and all that kind of good stuff, and so I'm just going to accept that as it is. Planning utilities, same kind of thing. Different things, we can set different things depending on whether the roads that are coming in are planning roads that were created using, say, Model Builder in InfraWorks 360, or if they were imported using other GIS tools. And when they come into Civil 3D, those planning roads are just going to be horizontal alignments. And so in this case, I want to set my horizontal alignments for planning roads to just be just a basic style, and I only want to see major and minor station labels. So I'm just going to leave them on that layer, and I'm going to say OK. Design roads, when InfraWorks 360 design roads come into Civil 3D, they're going to have both an alignment and a profile associated with them. So I want to set these as, so for example, I want the alignments to use a layout style. I want to see all the labels. I want them on that layer. Layout profile, I also want to use a layout style. I'm happy with that layer. And I also want to set it so that they create an EG profile. And so I'm okay with that style there. So I'm just going to click OK and move on. So intersections are going to show up from InfraWorks into Civil 3D as an intersection with a curb return. And you'll see the marker, and it'll show up in the prospector tree as well. And it also creates curb return geometry. And you can just, same thing, set the alignment style that you want for those, and the label set and layer. So I'm going to say OK. Drainage networks. So this is where it gets interesting. So as Charlie mentioned earlier when he was showing you the InfraWorks model, the structures are using a common content catalog for both Civil 3D and InfraWorks. And so again, this is that same catalog that contains the parts that Charlie just showed in InfraWorks. And so for example here, this is going to say that if those two structures that Charlie showed exactly as they were an eccentric manhole, 48-inch, whatever. So when they come into Civil 3D, because they use the two products use the same parts catalog, that structure when it comes into Civil 3D is going to be a 48-inch eccentric manhole, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a one-to-one. It's just same part is the same part. And so if it can't find that part in the catalog, you can set a default part family and part size for each of those. And you can also say what you want those styles to be as they show up in Civil 3D for both manholes and for inlets as well. So for this case, I'm going to say I want the inlet style to be a catch basin. So I'm okay with everything else, so I'm going to say OK. So coverages and water areas are both going to come into Civil 3D as 3D polylines. I'm just going to leave the coverages where they are on layer 0, but for the water areas, just so that we can see what they look like, just so that they're a little bit different visually, I'm going to put them on, let's say, I'll put them on this vNode water blue layer. And I'm going to save this whole set of settings so that we can reuse it later. So right now I'm just going to name this as Tim's settings. Very original name that I'm sure all my other users are going to be happy with. So I'm going to save that, and I'm just going to click OK. And now I can go and I can share that XML file of these settings with other users so that other users can now say they can import Tim's rules or Tim's settings or whatever as part of their workflow. So now that I've got my settings set up, now it's a bit easier to hook things up and get going. So now I'm just going to say open InfraWorks 360 model, and I've got this whole dialog box here that's going to walk me through the process of what I need to do. So first thing I want to do is pick the model that I want to open, and as you see here, I can either, you have two different options here for how you want to connect to the model. First is if you have InfraWorks 360 installed on the same machine as you do Civil 3D, you can point directly to the SQLite file that houses the model. If you don't have InfraWorks 360, you can find someone that does and have them export an IMX file of that model that you want to point to and open it up that way. Fortunately, I have it, so I'm just going to point directly to the SQLite file. So I'm just going to scroll down and find the model that I want. That's the one, right, Charlie? Yep. Okay. So I'm just going to say open. So now Civil 3D is going to look into that model really quickly, and it's going to first, essentially, you can't proceed, you can't do anything yet until you set a coordinate system. And so it looks into Civil 3D, Civil 3D looks into the InfraWorks model and finds what the coordinate system is, and it shows you what's going on here and tells you that it needs a coordinate system to proceed. So as you see here, there isn't one set just yet in Civil 3D, and unassign there. So now you can just click this Set Coordinate System button, and it gives you a couple options here. You can either just accept the coordinate system that is already used in the model, or if you want to go in and use the drawing settings dialog in Civil 3D, you can do that. I know that in this case, this is the model coordinate system that I want, so I'm just going to apply that to the drawing. And so now everything's happy, and you can then, at this point, if you wanted to, you could just say Open Model and bring the entire InfraWorks 360 model into Civil 3D. That's a good thing if you have a very small model with a pretty limited extents geographically and a pretty small number of objects. But in this case, I know that this is a pretty decent sized model, and I don't want to bring the entire thing in. I only want to bring in just a portion of it. So I'm going to pick this area of interest option. And what I'm going to be able to do here is I'm going to be able to pick this button here that says Select Area, and I'm going to use this online map data tool that is included with AutoCAD. And essentially what we're going to do here is, once the map catches up, so what you're seeing here is this this bounding box here is the extents of the InfraWorks model, and now we've got this live Bing map that gives you some context of where in the world your model is located, and it's a really handy tool to kind of get you to focus on what you want to bring in. So in this case, I know that my model data that I want to bring in is in this area here, so I'm just going to drag a window around it, pick the area that I want. Now Civil 3D is looking back into the model to find out what sort of InfraWorks objects are available within that area, and it's just kind of grab a list of those objects, and it'll then kind of give us the opportunity to pick which sort of objects I want, and also like the styles and all that kind of stuff. And so so here we are. It picked out all that stuff. Now it's ready to go. So again, at this point, if I wanted to just say Open Model and just bring in that stuff that was in that small area, I can do that. And again, here's that settings, that TIM settings. It's going to use that. Or if I wanted to like have other settings picked out, recipes of settings picked out for different scenarios, I could pick one of those here. But I'm just going to use my settings that I already set. If you wanted to adjust them, you can do that here, just like you can for styles in Civil 3D. Lastly, this Refine Selection Set. This gives you a list of all of the objects that were found within that area of interest that we selected over here. And so you can collapse these just so that you can see like all the different things that are available. So just like, for example, lists like all the design roads that it finds, intersections, all the pipes and structures that were found in the drainage networks, and you can selectively pick things or clear them as you want. Water areas, and if bridges were there, it would show you bridges. So the only thing I'm going to do at this point is I'm really only concerned about the existing ground surface. I'm not concerned about either of these transportation or proposed ground surfaces. So I'm going to toggle those off, click OK, and now I'm ready to just bring all that stuff in to the Civil 3D drawing. So I'm just going to click Open Model, and I've got progress bar here showing you the progress. Moves along pretty quickly and just kind of shows you where you are in the process and everything. It actually gives you a count, which is kind of handy, so you know that it's not just sitting there locked up. You know that something's actually happening, so it's a good thing. So in just a moment here, okay, there we have it. So now you see we've brought all this stuff in here, and we can then use this Bing map to then go in and kind of validate where all this stuff falls in. And so the Bing map is really handy for this. But once I've kind of validated that everything's where I expected it to be, I can quickly turn that map off from the geolocation tab. And then now you see here what all I got. So for example here, we've got our intersection with our curb returns and all that kind of stuff. We've got alignments in two different things, just as we set in that settings file. So these white basic alignments, they use that basic style that you saw there. Those are those planning roads that were created using Model Builder, and then the design roads that we created using the road layout tools in InfraWorks use a different style. It's the same thing here. We have our water areas are blue, and as Charlie mentioned earlier, we have our drainage structures that were brought in as well. And if I look at those in Object Viewer, you'll see what those look like. They came in just as we expected them to. Same structures, eccentric cylindrical manholes, catch basins, all that kind of good stuff. So really good stuff there. And so now that I've got all this stuff in my Civil 3D drawing, I can continue to add design details to the Civil 3D model and everything. And so because this is a demo, I don't want to sit here and create a quarter for you guys and have you sit here and watch me. So I already created a quarter model in here, basically just created an assembly, added the quarter, all that kind of good stuff, created a quarter top surface. And I actually also, around the park and the soccer field, I added some grading to kind of just modify the land around there and everything. And so at this point in time, I'm happy with my design, and now Charlie might want to see that this design in InfraWorks and kind of see what how this corridor and these grading objects and everything look in context with the InfraWorks model that he's already created. So really all I need to do now is just save this drawing, and then I can just pass it right back to Charlie, and he can kind of see what these things look like in InfraWorks model. So back to Charlie.
All right. Thanks, Tim. All right, so what I'm going to do is switch, well, actually open up InfraWorks again. So far, you know, the InfraWorks model we started with, we used the design tools in InfraWorks for road, intersection, drainage, moved that into Civil 3D to do our detailed design. And now what we want to do, again, because InfraWorks is a good way to visualize the model when we're done, we want to bring that back into InfraWorks. So what I'm going to do is I have a proposal here that doesn't have the road in it that I want to bring back in. I want to bring in Tim's road into this model. So here's the model, InfraWorks model I'm going to start with. And what I'm going to do is go over to our InfraWorks menu and open up the data sources window. So from data sources, what we can do is import, what I want to do is import the AutoCAD Civil 3D drawing. So I'm going to use this command. And then browse, find my InfraWorks models. Oh, sorry, my Civil 3D. Sorry, C project Santa Rosa. So this is the drawing that Tim had just saved, corridor grading and drainage. So I'm going to open that up. And a number of items will come into the data sources window here. It's going to bring in the road, coverage areas for the corridor, some services, the pipes and the structures, and also some terrains for the grading area. There was did you show the grading area? Grading area around the park. Okay, and the court. There's a surface for the corridor. So we're going to bring all this in, except I don't need, again, these InfraWorks terrain, so I'm just going to turn those off and bring the rest in. So the roads, the grading, the drainage, and the corridors coverages. So I'll say OK. So that's brought in these different groups into the different types of data. What I'm going to do is just change how I view this panel by looking at source type. And now I can see everything that I just brought in from that Civil 3D drawing. So this is all listed by drawing, and then the type or the feature type. So I'm going to look at, I could look at these or kind of bring them in as a group, but I'm just going to go through them individually to show what's going on a little bit better. So I'm going to start with the road, and I'm just going to double click on that, or you can hit the configure button up here. This is just going to open up the configuration window. And this is just showing the information. It's going to map some information from what's being imported into our model. If I go to the Civil 3D tab, I can see all the roads it wants to bring in. What I want to do is bring in the one that Tim has done some detailed design for. So I'm going to turn all of them off except for this parkway. That's the road I want to bring in. Geolocation has the coordinate system set. You don't typically need to go beyond these, but there are settings for draping. Table just gives you kind of the mapping between the data that's being brought in and the InfraWorks model, and then some script settings. I'm mainly just looking at the Civil 3D drawing tab here, so I can filter out what I'm bringing in. And then I'm just going to close and refresh. And this is going to bring in the road. This is also using, you'll see the road, and actually I should have zoomed in before. What you see here is maybe what it's doing is bringing in a very thin road. This is based on the style we have that I can show you in a moment. And it's also bringing in the decorations for the road. So the trees that you see along this path and the lamps along the edge, that's coming in from a style that I have for roads called Boulevard, oops, sorry, where's it? Null Boulevard. So this is a road style. It's just a very thin track of road, and it has some decorations along it. So it has trees, and it has the lamps. So we're bringing in this small track of road because we're going to use the coverages from the corridor to give the visual appearance of the road. So the road object is just this thin object here. So let me go ahead and I'll show you how the mapping works afterwards, but I just want to bring in the rest of the roads. So I'm going to bring in the terrain for the road next, and this one I'm just going to refresh. You could open configuration, but there's really nothing to set up, so I'm just going to refresh it. And then you can see what it's done is bring in the terrain or the corridor surface. So I can see the shape from our Civil 3D drawing, shape of the terrain. And then next, the coverage areas for the corridor. And again, I'm just going to refresh this one. And now I have what looks like our road. So what this has done is it's looking at the link styles that are in the corridor, and based on the link styles we used in Civil 3D, it's mapping those to a coverage style in InfraWorks. And that's done through style rules. So let me just quickly show you how that's working. First of all, let me just show you the road. So the road is being mapped actually based on, in Civil 3D, the alignment style that we used. In this case, Tim's Road used an alignment style called Boulevard. And when we bring that into InfraWorks, the tag field gets filled with that alignment style. So in this case, the tag becomes Boulevard, and then the style rule then tells us which road style to use. So as an example, let me just create a new style here called Design. This is a style rule, and I'm going to edit it. So just give this a name. You can fill in a description if you want, and then an expression. This can apply to many different things, but in our case, what we're doing is mapping the Civil 3D alignment styles and coverage or link styles for the coverages. So I'm going to set the tag equal to design. So this would be a case where if in Civil 3D my alignment style was called design, I could set this up like this and then just tell it down at the bottom here which style to use. So I'll say sidewalks and lamps, and let me just move over to another road I have. All right, so now I have in my style rules, I have design style rule set up to set this other style on. One last thing I do want to do is hit commit to actually save the style rule change that I made. And then I'm also going to go back into my model here. So this is a different road. I just wanted to show as an example. This road, I guess I had done that in the proposal. So if I manually enter tag for this other road here, then what I should do is look at the style rules and use the setting I assigned. And a way you can force the rules to be applied afterwards is with this Run Rules tab. So I hit that to run the rules. Whoops, and I forgot to do one thing over here. So I entered design. I do need to update so it's actually using design. Then go back to style rules, and now I just want to run my rules. And it should apply the rules to this road. So now I see lamps along the road. So that's basically all it did when it brought in our model from Civil 3D. So I'm going to go back to our road. So again, it used the boulevard alignment style and matched to figure out this thin road that had some decorations on it. And then for the rest of the corridor, the visual appearance, those all use coverage areas. It's the same concept, except instead of looking at alignment styles, these are looking at our link styles that we use in the corridor in Civil 3D. So for example, pave, which is set up for the pavement in Civil 3D. These all get tagged, and then when they're brought into InfraWorks, they just use a coverage style that's this surface black asphalt. The sidewalk is just being tagged and then bringing in the surface concrete linear pattern. Same with the curb, same with the grass. So that's how we get this appearance to be brought in, and so we can rent the road to look like we had it in Civil 3D as the corridor. All right, so some other things, let me go back to our data sources. So I brought in the road. the terrain for the road, and the coverages for the road. So next I'm going to bring in the drainage. So I'll start with the structures. And this one too, I can just refresh. And that's going to bring in the inlets that we have along the edge of the road. You can see on both sides next to the tree there. And also manholes running down the roadway. So if I go far enough, you'd see the next one, next set of inlets and manholes. Right, and then we have pipes. This one I'm going to open up and configure. You can see on the Civil 3D tab, like we did for roads, you can see all the pipes listed. But I'm opening this up. We could use a rule style here, similar to that we did for the roads. But another way to show this is to use the rule style setting inside the configuration. I can hit the pencil. And then just, since all these pipes use the same style, I can just choose the style that I want to apply here. So I'm choosing concrete pipe. I'll close and refresh. And then I'll just spin underneath the road so I can see our pipes. So here you can see all the pipes came in, the structures. So all that stuff we had in Civil 3D. Last thing I'm going to bring in is the park, the grading that Tim had done over here on the park. So we have a grading group that was brought in as a terrain, and I'm just going to refresh that, and we'll see the park is raised, the court is raised. So we've brought in our terrain. All right, so now we have a nice visual model or visual display of our Civil 3D drawing. While we're looking at this visual display, Tim perhaps has made some changes in Civil 3D. So we just want to show quickly, if Tim goes back to Civil, make some changes, that we can update these inside of InfraWorks. So
Right.
I'm going to hand it back to Tim.
All right, thanks. So again, your model will have iterations to it and everything. It's not like you're going to have one design over the course of your entire project and stick to it. So what happens when you have to change your design, like the detailed design that you've already brought in? So let's find out. I'm going to go back into Civil 3D, back into my drawing here. And so one thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to turn Rebuild Automatic off for a moment. And just so that we have a quick, just a really quick, silly, obvious change and everything, I'm going to change the radius of these two curves so that they're going to be a bit different so that you'll just be able to see what happens. So just for example, if I were to change that radius of that alignment there, I thought I turned Rebuild off. Okay, so there's that. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here just for kicks. Drag that over there. Okay, so now I've got that done. I'm going to rebuild my corridor. So I'm going to just, once this is completed, I'm going to hand this drawing back over to Charlie and everything so that he can show you how InfraWorks will stay updated with the design with the design changes that we've done in Civil 3D. And so, okay, so now my corridor surface has been updated, and so now that the radius is a bit tighter and everything. And then I'm also going to go into this grading object here, and I'm going to change the elevation of this feature line that's defining here, just so that you can see like how the surface can be updated as well. So I'm just going to do a really quick, just going to lower the surface down a bit like that. And so there now it daylights differently to that surface. And so now that I've got those changes made, I'm just going to, once again, just save this drawing. And I'm going to hand it back over to Charlie, and he can show you how we can then consume those changes to that design in the InfraWorks model. So back at you.
All right. All right, so I'm going to go back into InfraWorks. And I'm still using my data sources panel here. So the first time we brought all this data in, it basically created a link in the background to the data or where the data came from. We could use, if we use the refresh button, all it's going to do is just bring in the data that's stored right now in the background. So it's going to bring in the same thing it brought in before. So what I'm going to do instead is go into our road and bring them all at the same time. So the road, the corridor coverage, and the terrain from the road. And I'm going to right-click on these, and instead of refresh, because that's just going to bring in the same thing I have, what I want to do instead is re-import. So this is going to go back to, use the link to go back to Civil 3D and bring in another copy of the new version of this data. So I'm going to hit re-import and check out the curves along the roadway. It's processing the data, regenerating the model, and now you can see these are much smaller curve radii along the road. So the other example was the grading that he did around the park. So same thing, I'm just going to look at the grading group, right-click, and re-import. So this one might be a little more subtle, but the grading should get lowered as Tim lowered it in Civil 3D. Once it brings in the data, and then regenerates the model. So again, subtle, but you can see it's a much smaller rise here. So it's updating the model based on those changes Tim made. So that is it. We have our visual display of our Civil 3D drawing, as well as some changes Tim made. So at this point, I think we want to take a look and see if there's any more questions.
Yeah, so yes, that's really it. So questions. So I know Seth and Dave have been online kind of frantically trying to keep up with questions and everything. One of which was an interesting one that we hadn't thought of presenting, but it's pretty key. Luis had asked, if you have many proposals in your model, which proposal can you import with this process into Civil 3D? Is it only the master proposal? And so the answer to that is Civil 3D goes and looks at the most recently used proposal. So in the example that we were just using, Charlie, when we closed InfraWorks, we were using the this one particular proposal that was, I think, preliminary design. Yeah. Yep. So when we had that one open, we closed the InfraWorks model, and then that was it was the last used proposal. So that was the one that was picked when it was brought into Civil 3D. So it's whichever one was the last one used when you closed the InfraWorks model. That's the one that is brought in. Hope that answers the question somewhat clearly. Seth, I'm not sure if you have any other kind of common questions that came up or anything that was really interesting, any other recurring themes that came up?
I'm just going back through the list to see if there's anything we missed. Between me and Chakri and Dave, we've we've got them covered, but there's a few more coming in, so
Great.
let me see.
Great. So, and again, this is, I mean, so as we mentioned at the beginning of this, it's, I mean, this is, you don't necessarily have to have both products on the same machine in order to do this. If you want to consume an InfraWorks model in Civil 3D and you do not have access to InfraWorks 360, then you can use that IMX file, just exporting the model from InfraWorks into IMX, and then you can then hand that IMX file over to a Civil 3D user that they can then connect to that IMX file and open all those InfraWorks 360 objects into their Civil 3D drawing and still have the same functionality that way. So a bit of flexibility there. So yeah, if I haven't heard, Seth, we don't know if there are any other like.
I think there's some that are easier to answer online.
Okay, yeah. So we're going to keep up with these questions and everything as they come in, and also we have all your information about your contact information, email, and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, so and again, we recorded this session and everything, so the recording will be available up on that community site for InfraWorks 360 that we mentioned earlier. And if there are any specific questions that really get into the weeds of this that we did not get answered, then we can certainly contact you via email and get back to you with some solid answers with that and everything. So on that note, just a reminder that the Inside Bridge Design webinar, similar to this, is going to be on Wednesday, June 3rd at the same time. Again, look at all those, the community site, the forum, and all of our social media areas for InfraWorks 360 for information on registering for those, for that next webinar that's coming up and for others in the future. And really that's the end of it. So Charlie, unless you have anything else that you wanted to add?
Nope. That's it.
Awesome. Well, great.
Thanks for attending.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your time, everyone, and I hope this was useful. So thanks and have a good day.